Blog Talk Radio.
Chiamo Afurakanu Afuraitkaitnut Ineye EGUA da Medinde Ojirapo Kwesi Radna Mpata Akan. Akamumai Amarukai Tikibu Ojirapo. That means greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnut people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is EGUA Day, Marketplace Day. My name is Ojirapo Kwesi Radna Mpata Akan. Ojirapo of the Akamu Nation in North America. Did I say we thank you once again for tuning into the program. For the individuals who are on the phone line, if you have a question or a comment, hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. And if you are in the chat room and you have a question or a comment, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for username very quickly in Blog Talk, and then you can interact in the chat room. We are placing some links in the chat room right now. The first link we're going to place in the chat room is the Oman Economic Development page link. We're placing that link in the chat room. And we also going to place our UBEN-HYENG link in the chat room as well. And for the individuals who are new to the program, we have 3 programs on a weekly basis. We have on Joda Mondays, Akan Nanasom, Ancient, Authentic, Akan Ancestral Religion, which we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion. Number 1, because we are Akan. Number 2, because there's a great deal of misinformation that is being propagated about Akan culture, Akan philosophy, Akan cosmology, the nature of the Supreme Being, Nyamewa Nyame, the nature of the Bosom, the forces of nature, the nature of the Nananum Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestors and their relationship to us. So we go into detail on that particular broadcast, dealing with the Akan expression of ancestral religion specifically. On Benada, Abinada, which is Tuesday night, we have Odwira. And on Odwira, which means purification, we deal with Afuraitkaitnut, ancestral religion in general, and how it impacts every aspect of our lives. And when we talk about Afuraitkaitnut, ancestral religion, or Nanasom, we're talking about the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That is what Nanasom or Afuraitkaitnut and through religion is in essence. The expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion, the ritual incorporation of divine law, which means through ritual we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and therefore restore balance to our lives. So the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion, Nanasom, is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That is Nanasom in essence. This is what we deal with on Odwira Da, Purification Day. So we're purifying the understanding of ancestral religion, purifying the understanding of, for example, from ancient Kemet, the nature of the ancestresses and ancestors and their relationship to us, the nature of the divinities and their relationship to us, the nature of the Supreme Being, the Great Mother and Great Father, Aminet and Amen, also called Nyamewa, Nyame, Komosu and Chukwu, Mawu and Lisa, and so forth. Various aspects of ancestral religion, practice, culture, philosophy, cosmology, and so forth, going into detail dealing with that. And just going into a great deal of information and showing the misinformation that's being propagated and clarifying these things. So that's what we deal with on Benada, Abinada, or Tuesday night. And then, of course, we have EGUA Day, Marketplace Day, every Awukuda, every Akwada Wednesday night. And EGUA means the marketplace, and we're dealing with businesses, products, services, businesses, institutions, organizations, Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, businesses, organizations, and institutions that are serving the Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut community in a positive capacity, how they utilize their ancestral religious values to inform their service to the community. So we've had a number of individuals come on talking about their businesses, organizations, and institutions, and we also, included with that, we also have shows where we talk about the philosophy which undergirds our approach to business and commerce, our approach to economic activity. So in that vein, we have published our OCOM economic development model. And when you go to the, just place that link in the chat room. So when you go to the OCOM economic development model page on our website, you'll be able to download that entire model. And what it is a model of economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values. So first and foremost, you can download that model. Then also on that page, you also see the 4-part series we did on OCOM economic development on Blog Talk. And what we did was we went through the entire model, dissected the model, showing its various applications to every aspect of our lives as an economic approach. And that parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can download the videos of those broadcasts on the page as well. Then we also have the Blog Talk broadcast called EGUA, which is economic warfare. You can download that broadcast as well because it's directly related. We talk about, for example, fundamentally in that broadcast, that economic warfare, when you look at Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people, our ancestresses and ancestors who were forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuo Keti, the great perversity, the enslavement era, then we understood when we came onto these shores that every time we interacted with one another, whether it's exchanging information, exchanging material items, exchanging ideas, these things were taking place behind enemy lines. Until we became free and independent and sovereign and secure in that sovereignty, we were interacting with one another behind enemy lines. And because we recognize that every time we exchange information, every time we exchange material goods and so forth, they were designed to strike towards our liberation as a people. Every exchange was valuable because we understood the context within which we were operating. The same is true today. Until we become independent, sovereign, and secure in that sovereignty, establishing our own independent nation, self-ruling, self-governing on our own land and secure in that sovereignty, then every interaction we engage in with one another here, whether it's intellectual, whether it's spiritual, whether it's physical, whether we're exchanging goods, services, whatever it is, we are operating behind enemy lines. So therefore, we must recognize that every exchange of information or any exchange of material is something that should be utilized to strike towards our liberation as a people. So we go into detail about that, economic warfare, in that particular broadcast. So you'll find that on the page as well. And then you also find the broadcast, Kwarifo Ne Amambre, which is dealing with self-employment and ancestral culture. We talk about self-employment from the perspective of self, meaning the divine consciousness, your krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness, the divinity that dwells in the head region, that force in nature that was assigned to us pre-incarnation by the Supreme Being to be placed in our head region, a divinity. A male divinity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female, a force in nature that dwells in your head region that pulls you towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with divine order. That force that you feel in your head region, your krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness, when you align with that force, you also align with the specific function you are designed to execute in creation. As a cell within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, just like the cells within your body, which have their own specific functions, and they have a form that reflects the function they are to execute. So are we cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being as Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people, and we have a specific function to execute creation in the great divine body. That is our quote-unquote destiny or our quote-unquote life focus. In our Akan culture, the male and female aspect of that focus is the Nkra and Nkrabe, talking about the divine function or mission we are to execute and the manner in which we are to execute that function. And also, in connection with that is the She and Shebiya, the specific configuration of spiritual energy that we've been given to execute that function and the manner in which we are to wield that specific configuration of energy that's unique to us to support that divine function. So when we align with our Kra, our soul, our divine consciousness, our self, so to speak, and we employ the energy, the unique configuration of energy that we have been given to support our function, we are engaged in self-employment. And once we engage in such alignment spiritually and align our activities with the divine function we've been given to execute in the world, therefore engage in self-employment internally, then that extends externally to our physical affairs. We begin to engage in self-employment socially, within society, within the Afurakanu Afuraitkaitnut community. And then we engage in the kind of self-employment that's harmonious, that reflects our divine function but does not create disorder in the world and in our Afurakanu Afuraitkaitnut community in the process. So that's culture, that's way of life. That's when we deal with economic activity from a holistic perspective. So we go into detail about that in that particular broadcast. So those 6 broadcasts you'll find on the Okan Economic Development page. You'll also find the Okan Economic Development model, which you can download directly from the page. And then you find the list of businesses that we have been supporting as a community. We've been targeting one business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks. And the method that we use that is outlined in the Okan Economic Development model is to starve the beast and feed the prize. That means simply that you make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds you would have potentially wasted with the whites and their offspring, and then you starve the beast and feed the prize. You reallocate those funds from the whites and their offspring instead of wasting that $5, $10 at Starbucks or Walmart or CVS or whatever it is. You starve that white beast and feed the prize. You direct it to the business, organization, or institution of the week. In this manner, we redirect funds and reallocate funds to a business, organization, or institution in our community for capital infusion, for optimal capital infusion. That includes, and when you look at the list, you'll see the list of businesses, but if one person does that, of course, they reallocate their $10 or $15, of course, then it's going to the black business of the week. If 1,000 people do that, then that's a $15,000 infusion of capital into a black business in the course of 1 week. And in that fashion, we can fund our business. That infusion of capital will allow these businesses to remain open, to expand their products, services to the community, hire people within the community so that they can serve us at a greater capacity, and at the same time, they can, remain open. And this way, we're supporting our economic activity in a holistic fashion. If we don't do that, by default, what we are doing is we're simply supporting the whites and their offspring, our absolute enemy. We're giving them the funds, and we're wasting our money. We're supporting them, supporting their children, supporting their institutions, supporting everything that they're doing. And instead of taking part of that $1 trillion+ that our people spend on a yearly basis and reallocating it to service our needs and meet all of our needs, if we utilize our resources properly, we could utilize or serve all of our needs. Schools we need in all of our communities, we could build with the money that we already have that comes through our hands. We can develop healing centers in a holistic fashion, so-called hospitals, but healing centers that serve every Afuraitkaitnut individual in the community. We could serve our people educationally within the community. We can employ every single Afuraitkaitnut person in the community, in the country, if we simply utilize the funds that we're already generating and giving away to the whites and their offspring and redirected them to our businesses, organizations, and institutions. We could employ every single Afuraitkaitnut individual in the country. So nobody goes unemployed. All it takes is us changing our mindset. So this is what we deal with the Akan economic development model. So you'll see the list of businesses and the websites and the links to the broadcast interviews on this broadcast they did with us, where they sat with us for a couple of hours and went in detail to talk about their business, their approach to serving the community, their organization, their institution, and how their ancestral religious values inform their service to the community. So you'll see all of that on the Akan economic development page. So we put that link there as well. So now we want to get to, we want to pull up this real quick. Okay. And we just want to check to make sure we have this link here. Just give us a second real quick. Just want to make sure we have this out. What we want to do tonight, the show called EBO, the nature of worth and value in ancestral economics. So in the Akan tradition, the term EBO deals with worth and value. So we're going to read a little definition real quick from the Asante Fanti dictionary regarding EBO, and then we're going to get into the UBEN-HYENG, the ancestral summon, and then we're going to pull this information together to show what we're dealing with. So first you look at the term EBO, meaning first a piece or figure of brass or other metal, a stone or a seed used for a weight. So we talk about abrambo, talking about the gold weights and so forth, that we use to measure gold dust in the Akan tradition. You see these little brass weights, and hundreds of years ago, over 1,000 years ago, when we had gold dust, we were very high traders in gold, which we call Seker, which we're going to get into. And when we were weighing gold dust to determine how much we were going to utilize for, economic activity, you have a little scale, and you put the gold dust on one side, and then you have the weight, whether it's 1 gram or 2 grams or 3 grams or 4 grams or whatever it is, to balance out to see how much gold dust you would have. If you had 1 gram of gold dust, you use a 1 gram weight to see how much you have, or a 2 gram weight or a 3 gram weight or whatever. What we did in our Akan culture, instead of just having the 1 gram weight or a 2 gram weight or a 3 gram weight or whatever, those little weights, which were made out of brass, were formed into different signs and symbols. And these are the abramu, or the abrambo, the Akan gold weight. They would be in the form of animal totem. They would be in the form of adinkra symbols. They would be in the plant life, animal life, mineral life, and they would always have a specific ebe, divine ancestral wisdom teaching associated with them. So they were encyclopedias. So instead of just having a weight that weighed 1 gram or something like that, we would have the weight, but it would be in the form of an adinkra symbol, representing a specific ebe or ancestral wisdom teaching. So when we had these weights, we would also utilize them in the form of sacred dictionaries, repositories of ancestral wisdom. We would communicate through these symbols as well and teach through these symbols as well. So that's just one application of that. But the EBO, again, is a piece or a figure of brass or other metal, a stone or a seed, and again, abrambo, that's one thing dealing with that. But it also means, the related term, bo, means a stone or rock, something rare, something precious, something costly, rare, or precious, something dear, something of value. So we're talking about stones, the term for stone, abo, or abo, and then a piece of metal that's something of value, something rare, something precious. Of course, there's a relationship to the term abosom, bo meaning not just stone or rock, som meaning to serve, but we're talking about not to serve rocks, and the whites and Australians will say, well, their worship of the deities is the service of rocks and so forth. we're talking about the service of something that is precious, that is rare, that is sacred, that is of great value. This is what we're dealing with. The relationship between the metal, EBO, the piece of metal, different kinds of metal, and oba, stone or rock. Of course, you'll find the iron within the stone, within the earth. You'll find gold within the earth. You'll find silver within the earth. You'll find various precious metals and so forth, and gems and so forth in the stone, in the earth. So there's a relationship between EBO, talking about the piece or figure of brass or other metal, as well as stones and so forth, and oba, meaning rock. But it also has to do with rare and precious. Why is it rare and precious and valuable and everlasting? Because, of course, the rock formation of the earth is precious and it's everlasting and it's unburnable, so to speak. It can't be destroyed. The foundation of the solid aspect of the earth. So all of that is tied up into EBO and obo, and that's why it has to do with value. It has to do with worth. It has to do with that which is costly, that which is precious. So you have a number of different connections there. So that's the portion in dealing with EBO. Now, let's get further into dealing with worth and value from the standpoint of EBO dealing with a piece of metal. Now, when you look inside of the earth and the rare, precious metal inside of the earth, the kind of rare and precious metal inside of the earth that does not rot, does not, quote unquote, spoil. What is that rare, precious metal inside the earth that does not rot or spoil? That is what in Akan culture is called Sika, and of course in English that is called gold. So when you look at gold, it doesn't spoil, and it's one of the most precious and sought-after metals. It is the metal or the piece that's EBO, that is within the rock or within the stone, oba, and it's rare, and it's precious, and it's everlasting, EBO. But there's a different connotation to that, because there are divinities that govern not only the stones, but also these metals. In the Akan tradition, you have the Bosom called Bosom Sika. It's a Bosom deity, Sika, dealing with gold, but also we eventually use gold for media of exchange. What are we dealing with when we're talking about a force in nature that governs gold? That's this gold substance inside the stone or the rock, and it has something to do with value. So let's go to information dealing with ancient Kemet and Kanat and talk about this major divinity that's operating within the earth, within the stone, within the oba. But within the oba, you have the EBO, which is within the rock. The oba, you have the EBO, which is the stone, the EBO, which is the precious metal that's within the earth. So we're going to get to some basic information about the divinity Seker or Sakar, Seker from ancient Kemet. People, and sometimes you see it spelled Seker, Sokar, Sekri, different variations of that. People know about Sakar as the divinity in Mennefer, so-called Memphis, governing the sanctuary of Sakar, which is the region where the step pyramid is, the famous step pyramid. Seker is connected to Ptah. He's also connected to Asar. When you see the triune divinity of Ptah, Seker, and Asar, you're looking in reality, Ptah governing, as we talked about before, Obuade governing the white wall. Ptah south of his wall, and he governs the Anebu Tech, the white walls, that is a sacred sanctuary in ancient Kemet. Ptah dwelling in Mennefer, which was the seat of government for a long period in ancient Kemet, and dwelling within the white walls, that's his sanctuary in the body. The white walls are the right and left hemispheres of the cerebral cortex. Ptah operates through the brain, the formative power that operates through the brain. You see Ptah with the cap on, the quote-unquote skull cap, and that is the limbus, with the limbus system in the brain, and surrounding that is the white, grayish, fleshy matter, right and left hemisphere. Those are the white walls within which the limbus, the cap, the midbrain is at. And Ptah is there in that sanctuary, fashioning thought form on a consistent basis. He's the divine fashioner in creation. And that divine fashioner in creation is the fashioning force within your brain. Your brain is the shrine for Ptah. So those are the white walls. But then you also have Ptah, Seker, and Asar. And they are operating within the same body. These are three different divinities operating within the body. We talked about Asar, also called Awusi and Akan, and Ajo and Akan, we talked about this week. Asar operating through the pituitary gland, which is a master gland in the body, which has a regulatory function within the body, regulating the functions of other organs and glands through hormonal secretion. So you have the pituitary gland, so Ptah in the brain, Asar through the pituitary gland, and then you have Seker or Sekra dealing with the spinal column, dealing with the vertebrae as well as the skeletal structure in general, the bone, the quote-unquote obo, the stone, the bone in the body. And of course, they talk about Sakar as a divinity of the dead and talking about mummification and so forth. The stones in your body are the bones in your body. The obo, the stone, is the bone, but within the stone, within those bones is something sacred. So let's look further. So you look at Sakar, what we call Sika. He's the patron of the workers who built the necropolis and the craftsmen who made tomb artifacts and of those who made ritual objects and substances used in mummification. This is Sakar or Seker. Now they will say the meaning of his name is unclear to the whites and their offspring. It may be derived from the terms SKR, Sakar, meaning cleaning the mouth, mentioned in the coffin text and in writing related to the opening of the mouth ceremony, one of the funerary rituals. However, others suggest that it relates to the phrase Sikri, meaning hurry to me, which was the cry for help uttered by Asar to offset. And others suggest it means the adorned one. He was known by the epithet Kiev-Rasta. This refers to the area around the pyramids in Kasa or Giza, but also related more generally to any necropolis and to the entrance to the underworld. He is also known as the Lord of the mysterious region, the underworld, and the great God with his two wings open, referring to his origins as a hawk divinity. And of course, when we're talking about the two wings open with regard to Sakar, and of course, Sakar also means dealing with bones and the structure in the sanctuary. Those two wings that are open, dealing with his hawk nature. The two wings in the skeletal system, of course, is the expansive rib cage, is what they're dealing with regard to Sakar. This is what we're talking about, which they have not understood that yet. But we're going to get into that. In Ntoro, so-called Memphis, was the primary cult center of this divinity. On the 26th day of the 4th month of Aket, the sowing, the festival of Sakar was held there. The people of ancient Kemet performed the rituals of hoeing the earth and driving cattle, implying that Sakar was also an agricultural deity, and a huge statue of the divinity was carried around on a Hindu boat, Hindu bark, a boat with a high prow shaped like a horned oryx and a funerary chest. Before we go forward, the term Sika also means to plow. So, but it's not just dealing with to plow the earth or cutting into the earth when you're talking about cultivation. Because when you're cutting into the earth as well, you cut into the earth on one hand to cultivate. But part of cultivation in that regard, sometimes we're utilizing English terms, so the white non-spring will see, okay, there's an image of a plow. The term is Sika. It means to, open up the earth and so forth. It looks like a plow, so therefore they're talking about tilling the earth, and that means cultivation and divine life, so it must have to do with agriculture and fertility. However, when you're talking about the culture, when you plow and you open up the earth, that has to do also with death, because you must open up the earth, cut into the earth in order for burial to take place. In fact, burial is the precursor to resurrection and birth of the seed. So when you take a seed and you open up the earth and you plant the seed, you can call it planting, but then what you're really doing is you're burying the seed. And then you bury the seed and you cover it over with earth. It's like we bury a body and then we cover it over with earth. And once we bury the body and return that body to the earth, then the spirit resurrects and rises up out of the earth. And in the same fashion, you bury the seed that came out of the plant at the harvest time, because once the fruit or the vegetable, whatever it was, the produce was separated from the tree or separated from, the plant life, then for all intents and purposes, that fruit, if you detach an apple, for example, from the tree, now it's no longer connected to that life source. Now, of course, the vitamins and minerals and so forth that are in the apple support us when we consume the apple, but you just disconnected the apple from its life force, so that apple is, quote unquote, deceased to a certain extent. So we consume it, but if we just leave it there, of course, it will rot, it will deteriorate, it will decay, because it's separated from its life source. If it was still hanging on the tree, it would still be vibrant and powerful. But when it's disconnected from the life force, then it begins to deteriorate. But we can consume it and take in those fruits and vegetables, those nutrients and vitamins and minerals, and then we can take the seeds that were in that quote-unquote deceased fruit, because the seeds still have potential, and we bury them in the soil, and then we cover the seeds up. So when you talk about plowing, you're talking about the burial of a seed. So when they saw the term Sika, and it means to plow, and they saw, it means cultivate, he must be an agricultural deity, and that's not really what Sakar is talking about with regard to agriculture. We're talking about plowing, we're talking about burial. So we just want to clarify that, because these are the finer points that they don't cover when they're talking about this kind of information. So by the Middle Empire, the festival incorporated Saurian aspects of festivals in Abju, so-called Abydos. By the New Empire, so-called New Kingdom, the festival had expanded to Ta'apet, so-called Thebes, where it rivaled the great Apet festival, dealing with men and so forth, but it wasn't a rival, of course, there was no conflict. It's thought that the festival celebrates the rebirth of Al-Sar and stressed the continuity of the power of the sovereign. Sakar or Seker was initially worshipped as a totem and then as a personified hawk or falcon. However, during the Old Empire, he was generally depicted on the throne with a wasp, scepter, and an ankh, life. By the New Empire, he was depicted a hawk-headed mummy with the wasp scepter, representing power, and a flail and a crook. Talking about the Nkaka and the Hek, the flail and the crook, as you see. He usually stands on a funerary mound, dealing with the primordial mound, or the primeval mound, and wears a sun disk, cow's horns, and the regal cobras similar to the Atef crown. So the divinity, dealing with the underworld and so forth, wearing the sun disk. So there's a solar energy in the underworld on top of that mound. Although in certain situations as well, he wears the white crown. As a falcon divinity is often related to Heru and wears the double crown of upper and lower command. Every time when you see the hawk-headed divinity, all of these hawk-headed divinities are descendant, of course, from Ra and carry that kind of fiery energy connected to the hawk. So Ra has a hawk or falcon's head, so does Mentu, so does Kensu, Neferhetep Heru, so does Heru, son of Al-Sar and Al-Set, so does Heru Behudet. That doesn't mean that they're all the same divinity. They all are from the same lineage, just like you are descended, for example, from your father's side, and you have the same DNA from your father's side, and everybody from that lineage going back thousands of years has that same DNA. You're all different people, but you have a connection to that same spirit-genetic power. In the same fashion, Ra is the great progenitor, and specifically dealing with solar energy, solar power, the kind of fiery divinities, they will have that hawk head or falcon head because they come from that specific line. But they are different divinities with their own functions in creation, but of course they are servants of Ra as well as Ra'et. So that's why they talk about related to Heru, but we're talking about specifically. From the Middle Empire, he was merged with Ptah. Ptah, Seker, represented the soil and its power to create life. Ptah was considered to be the patron of artisans. Seker became specifically the patron of goldsmiths. So that's key. What do we want to get to? Soon after Seker became associated with Al-Sar as the composite divinity Ptah, Seker, Al-Sar. And we just talked about Ptah in the brain. He's the fashioner, he's the former, he's the artisan, fashioning the world, fashioning planets, sun, moon, stars, fashioning the bodies of plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, human life. Ptah also fashions the shrines of the divinities on earth, and then their spirits take up a residence in those shrines, in the earth, and different features of the geological, or the geological features of earth, whether it's the stony regions or the river bank regions or the mountainous regions, or whatever. These are the aspects of the earth that are fashioned in specific forms by Ptah. Once they're fashioned in specific forms, then the different divinities take up a residence in those natural shrines. So he does the same thing in your brain, fashioning thoughts, ideas, and so forth, according to what the Supreme Being dictates. And then we align ourselves with those thought forms that are fashioned by Ptah if we're living in harmony with divine order. But then the pituitary gland, taking the direction from the brain, from Ptah, the pituitary gland is Al-Sar, then secretes hormones, which are directives that regulate the functions of other glands and organs and systems in the body. But then you also have the vertebrae. And of course you have bone marrow cells in the vertebrae, and then generating blood cells and so forth. Structural, foundation, the bones, the skeletal system, you're dealing with the structure of the body, and of course the bones, the crust and everything, dealing with the structure of the earth. So you have brain, pituitary, vertebrae, including the central vertebrae of the spine and everything branching out from that spine. Brain, pituitary, spine, Ptah, Al-Sar, and Seker, the three divinities working together. Now, so we're just going to get through this piece, and then we're going to get back to the notion dealing with gold, him being the patron divinity of goldsmiths. So the composite divinity represented the three aspects of the universe: creation, stability, and death. In the New Empire period, in the so-called Pert Imheru, the so-called Book of Coming Forth by Day, misnomer as the Book of the Dead, Sakar unites with the forms of Al-Sar and Ptah. Ptah, Sakar becomes Sakar Al-Sar, the nocturnal sun, during the 4th and 5th hours of the Amdua, of the underworld. The priests of Sakar retained the same titles as the Menefer priests of Ptah and had used during the Old Empire, but now they almost always refer to the high priest of Anu, so-called Helios. Ptah, Sakar, and Al-Sar is generally depicted as a mummified hawk bearing the regalia of kingship. However, he was also represented as one of the Twa people, so-called pygmy, with a scarab beetle on his head, that scarab beetle connected to Kepra. It is thought that these images of Ptah, Seker, and Al-Sar were the source of the divinity called Ptaikos by Herodotus. Although Ptah, Sakar was married to Sekhmet, Sakar was sometimes linked to Nebuchadnezzar as well. Now, in the Duat, in the so-called underworld, describes the underworld in the terms of the spirit realm of the journey of Ra through the 12 hours of the night, 12 stages of the night. Sakar inhabits the hours 4 and 5 of the underworld. During the 4th hour, Ra enters the desert of Rostah. The river becomes a dry bed, littered with dangerous snakes, and the path is repeatedly blocked by huge doors. Ra's boat is transformed into a fire-breathing snake, and Tahuti and Sakar protect Ra as he makes his slow progress through the desert, the dry land in the underworld. In the 5th hour, the sun must pass over the cave of Sakar. Inside the cave, Sakar restrains the winged serpent Apep, which is representing disorder. Instead, the cave of Sakar is guarded by the Aker lions, or the Akeru, earth divinity. Now, these depictions have led some to speculate that Rostah was located close to the Great Pyramid, and that an actual tomb of Sakar is yet to be found under the sand close to the gateway and enclosure wall known as the Wall of the Crow, and all of that. So we're talking about Sakar as a divinity in the underworld, on the primordial mound, wearing a sun disk, talking about the sun moving through the darkness of the underworld, and then eliminating the negative projections of Apep, disorder. So what is this force in the stone, in the bone, in the underworld, carrying the solar energy during the 12 hours of the night? What is inside of the earth that's carrying that solar energy inside the quote-unquote underworld of the earth? What is the force? What is the precious source in the underworld? What is the golden, illuminated force in the underworld? We're talking about the term Sika, as we call it in the Akan tradition and the divinity Bosom Sika, talking about gold. Gold is the manifestation inside of the earth of the divine solar light of Ra and Ra'et. So it is a precious metal, EBO, that never deteriorates and never, quote-unquote, spoils and never, becomes corrupt. Is that golden energy, the Ba'et, the divine living solar energy of Ra moving in the underworld. That is the divinity Sika, as we call in Akan, or Seker in ancient Kemet. Inside your body, you have some aspects of that energy within your body. When you take in the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'et, when you take in a deep breath, the air outside is the air outside, but then once it gets inside your body and gets inside of the quote-unquote underworld and begins to circulate through your body, now the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'et, not just the air and oxygen, but the divine living energy is moving through your body. The divine living energy that animates us is the Ba'et, is that golden solar energy of Ra and Ra'et that animates us, that heats us up, that fires us up, is our energetic connection to the various abosom in creation, to their energy in creation. The reason why a force in nature, like one of the abosom of the sun, moon, oceans, rivers, thunder, lightning, and so forth, can possess us and communicate with us, because the divine living energy, a portion of that divine living energy that permeates all of creation, a portion of that is in our body, that's our our divine living energy, but it's also a portion of that energy of Ra and Ra'et that's inside the bodies of and spiritual bodies of the forces in nature. So we can link our energy with theirs. We can link our energy that's radiating from us with theirs. Just like you can have an electromagnetic field, you can feel the electromagnetic projections of someone else, but the divine living energy inside of us connects with the divine living energy within plant life, animal life, mineral life, other Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut, human life, as well as the forces in nature. And when we connect our energetic force with their energetic force, there's a bridge of energy that's created, a link. And their spirits can travel across that bridge of energy and possess and animate us and guide us and so forth. We have that solar energy or that gold within our bodies. And that force in nature, Sika or Sakar, the gold divinity governing goldsmiths and so forth, fashioning gold, fashioning that fiery force inside the body that's governing that force within us. So this is what we're talking about when we deal with that force in nature. Now, if we have that gold within us, that means we have something of value within us. We have something within us that will not rot, something within us that will not decay and so forth, something that will not go bad. We have something that can sustain the divine living energy consistently. You need something, gold is a conductor of electricity. Gold is used inside of computers and other devices, electronics and so forth, because of its nature, because of its conductive nature, and because of the fact that it doesn't rot, doesn't quote unquote go bad. So of course that's the kind of precious metal, the kind of EBO, the kind of precious metal that has that kind of value, that has that kind of worth that you will want to utilize to maintain your energy, whether it's an electronic device or whether it's inside of your body. So let's go to the UBEN-HYENG real quick. We're going to go to a specific section, and we're going to give you the page number first. All right, so this is page 15 in the UBEN-HYENG, the Ancestral Summit. And we're going to talk about, quickly, we're going to show the connection between this particular piece, and we're going to put the link back in the chat room real quick. We're going to talk about this nature of fashioning, nature of substance, and so forth. So the title of this particular piece in the UBEN-HYENG is a series. It's a book, one of our books that we have published, the Nsumafo, communicating with us, laying out principles for us, and we simply took this information down and giving us examples of the nature of our ritual practices and their functionality and their validity, their value and their worth. We have a number of different ritual practices that we engage in, and every ritual practice that we engage in ancestral religion has a specific function. We don't engage in anything that's purely symbolic. If it's just symbolic without substance, we don't utilize it. Everything we do, whether it's pouring libation, ancestral communication, ancestral shrine, deity possession, nature worship, whatever it is, we are receiving, processing, and transmitting energy in a measurable fashion, in a quantifiable fashion for a specific purpose. We are moving energy for a specific purpose to meet specific ends. That's what ritual practice is dealing with. So that is what UBEN-HYENG is talking about, and this specific section is called God is an Idolater. We're talking about the specific God we're talking about is Ptah here. So this is what the Nsumafo share with us about this notion. The title is God is an Idolater. An idol is substance, structured into a specified form, according to a pre-existent image. Is the sun idolized fire? It is not the creative power, but a vehicle through which that active and aggressive phase of creative power can manifest itself on the physical plane. Is the ocean idolized water? It is not the creative power, but a vehicle through which that passive and receptive phase of creative power can manifest itself on the physical plane. Is the moon idol? Is the earth idol? Is the jackal, lion, bear, serpent idol? Is the hammer idol? Does it not take the place of the creative destructive force on the physical plane? What is the greatest idol? Are you an idol? Did Goddess not provide the substance and God not structure your form? Are you created according to an image, born of the Supreme Being? Does God not worship you? Does he not word shift you? We're talking about Ra at this point. Does he not shift his word or shift his spirit, his power, his vibration, his breath into your very form while existing in essence as your form? God is an idolater, the great idolater. He creates idols daily. He idolizes perpetually. He idolizes you. Goddess sends the images which will become physical reality. Then God comes into being in the form of the thing it created. You exist as idol, and spirit word shifts you until you learn to worship it, until you learn to send yourself to self with a capital S to achieve union. Then you become the great idolater. Who of the Creator's idols now comes to destroy idolatry? Would he destroy himself? Spirit releases creative power, talking about Ra and Ra'et, releases creative power through the filter of a time-conditioned reality. Each phase of power generating a geometric pattern in space. Each pattern holding the key, the vibration of the phase of creative power which created it. If you are of God, if you are of Goddess, then you have the right and the responsibility to idolize. Your idolatry is creative process. Your fashioning of form after the design of a pre-existent pattern leads you to true worship. To shift, send a word is to shift, send your worth. Your worth is your value. Your value is expressed mathematically as the sum total of the vibrations whose unique key ratio of waves and rates manifest on the physical plane as your spirit body. True worth, word, shift turns the key, releases the vibration of the cosmic pattern. As every key is turned, every power is unleashed. At when it comes, you transcend time. So when we're talking about, first of all, fashioning idols, The Supreme Being fashions a specific form according to a pre-existent pattern and then shifts the divine living energy, or the words of sounds, sounds of vibration, shifts words or word shifts or shifts sounds, shifts vibration, shifts energy into the specific form. Your body is a specific form, fashioned by the Supreme Being according to a pre-existent pattern or image. And then Ra and Riot is sent, shifts their energy, word shifts you, or shifts their energy into your physical form to animate your physical form. That is idolatry. That is worshipping or word shipping or shipping words, shipping energy, sending words, sending energy into a specific form. That is idolatry. Idolatry is divine. It is sacred. It is brilliant ritual practice. When we get a specific sculpture of stone or some other precious metal or, any kind of, material from the earth, and we fashion it into a specific form according to a pre-existent pattern or image. The Supreme Being directs us to get a specific piece of wood, a specific stone, and fashion it into the form of a male or a female with specific features and so forth, and structure it according to the nature of a specific deity. And when we follow that blueprint given to us by the Supreme Being, that form that we place on the shrine, Ra and Ra will direct that divinity to go take up residence in that form, and they will take up residence in that form and fill their energy up with that form. So then when we communicate, pour libation, engage in ritual practice, the divinity will come down and take up residence temporarily in that form, that idol that we set up for them. That becomes a temporary body for them to dwell within. And now we have a communication with them. We are spirits that animate physical bodies. So we communicate our spirit to the spirit, the force in nature that's dwelling in this recently fashioned form, the physical body of that form, that idol, because the spirit force is dwelling within it, now it begins to radiate the energy of the divinity. It becomes, of course, a magnifier of energy for the divinity. So that form begins to radiate energy, and it affects our physical body. So our physical body is stimulated by the physical form of that idol. Our spirit body is stimulated by the spiritual force that has taken up residence in that idol, in that incesto, as we call it in Akan culture, in that idol. This is the same thing that Ptah does in creation, fashioning the ocean, fashioning the river, fashioning the different aspects of the planet. And once he fashions these different aspects of the natural world, then the deities whose energy is in harmony with those different aspects take up residence in those areas. The watery, cool energy divinities take up residence in the oceans and rivers. The fiery divinities take up residence in the core of earth and so forth, and other fiery aspects of the earth. The earthy divinities dealing with the red earth and the black earth and so forth take up residence in those forms. All the different forms that are fashioned by Ptah according to the dictates of Amen and Amenet, then the divinities take up residence there. So we're talking about idolatry being creative process guided by the Supreme Being. This is why the whites in Arab Springs demonize idolatry. When they invade your country and attack the people and wage war and say we lose a specific battle or whatever, and they try to impose their will, it's too dangerous for somebody who's been, compromised in that fashion. The whites in Arab Springs are ruling in the capital and so forth and trying to, lay down martial law and things like that. It's too dangerous. We can go into our home and set up a little idol, and then the divinity takes up residence in the idol and communicates with us to go massacre the whites in Arab Springs who invaded the country and show us how to massacre them, just by us setting up an idol and calling the divinity to come take up residence. That's too dangerous because they can't control that. So they had to make our people believe over thousands of years that idolatry is evil. We need to get rid of all the idols. And in Islam, they talk about getting rid of all the idols, and in Judaism and Christianity and so forth, getting rid of all the idols. Why were they scared of the idols? What were the idols going to do? They pretend like, these are just pieces of wood and stone, and you're just worshiping pieces of wood and stone. What they really understood is that the deities will communicate with us through these pieces of wood and stone. It's no different than a cell phone. If you have a cell phone, it's a piece of plastic with some circuitry in it. But if it's connected and there's a connection to, a service, then you can speak through that device with somebody thousands of miles away instantaneously. These idols that we fashion are the same thing. They're ancient, quote-unquote, cell phones, original cell phones. They are devices through which the divinities will take up residence, as well as the Aku and Aku, the ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, will take up residence. And then we can have a communication. And they're also transmission devices that we can use to repel negative entities as well. So this is the key. But we utilize these physical forms. Now, at the end, when we talk about true worth or wordship, we're talking about to ship or send a word. It's to ship or send your worth. Word and worth are from the same root. So when you talk about worship and you're worshiping an idol, you're word shipping or worth shipping. Shipping your words, shipping your worth. Shipping your sound vibration. Shipping your vibrational energy. Shipping your worth. What is your worth? Your worth is your value. Remember we talked about EBO, meaning that which is rare and precious and that which is of value. Your worth is your value. Your value is expressed, as we say in the text, and Ntoro say in the text, mathematically as the sum total of the vibrations whose unique key ratios of waves and rates manifest on the physical plane as your spirit body. That simply means that your spirit body is unique. You are ancestral spirit who entered into the womb of your mother and were born 40 weeks later. But before you got into the womb, your spirit was drawn to Inyamewa Inyame, the great mother and the great father. They assigned a specific divinity to dwell with you in your head region. That divinity took up residence in your head region of your spirit body. It's your spirit's brain. That is your krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness. That divinity has a specific function. It's colored with a certain kind of energy. If you have a fiery krawa soul, because you're governed by that kind of fiery divinity, then you're going to have a fiery disposition when you come into the world, and you have a fiery function to execute in the world. If you have a cool, watery divinity that governs your spirit body, then you're going to have a cool, watery disposition when you come into the world. So this is what we're dealing with. But you also come through a specific blood circle. So you have a patriclan divinity and a matriclan divinity that has governed your ancestresses and ancestors for thousands of years. So the union of the patriclan divinity and the matriclan divinity, just like the DNA from your mother and the DNA from your father combine to make up your body, the DNA in the sperm cells and DNA in the ovum, they combine to make up your physical body, and you have characteristics from your mother and your father, and you can see that in the facial features and the body type of the person, a blending of those two physiologically. Well, the energy that animated the sperm cell and the energy that animated the ovum cell, the patriclan divinity and the matriclan divinity, those energies fuse together as well in unison with the divinity in your head. So it's a triangle. It's an ahinasa. The deity in your head, the apex of the triangle. The bottom right and left corners of the triangle is the patriclan divinity and the matriclan divinity. They all work together in that triangle to create you a unique configuration of energy that has never existed before. Something from the mother, something from the father, and then something from the Supreme Being directly in the head region with a specific disposition. They all fuse together to make you who you are. So you have a unique configuration of energy. And you have a specific function in executing creation. That is your value to the great divine body. The cells in your body and your organs and glands and systems and so forth, their value is tied to their specific function in the body. The liver cells support liver functions. That is their value in the body. If they don't execute that function to support liver functions, they just become cancerous. They have no value to the body at that point. But their value is what they serve within the body, what function they serve in the body. The function determines the value, and your worth is determined by that function as well. So your value is rooted in your function, and that determines what your worth is, and of course that manifests as your self-esteem on a mundane level. But your value is tied to the function, your worth is tied to your value. So when Ntoro talk about here, the shipper send a word, is the shipper send your worth. What is your worth, your value, your specific collection of of vibrational energy that's unique to you, that's emanating from you, that nobody else has. When you shift that configuration of energy into the idol, into the little structure on your shrine, to invoke the Bosom using your own energy, your own unique energy, you're shipping your value, you're shipping your worth, your word shipping, worth shipping, you're worshiping an idol, shipping your energy, shipping your words, shipping your vibrations to the idol to provoke the energy of the Bosom that has taken up residence in that idol. Even when you talk to somebody, you're shipping your energy to them. If you're standing across the room from somebody and you begin to speak, the sound vibrations travel across the room, provoke the energy of the person by stimulating their eardrums. They pick up your energy. They are stimulated by it. They are oscillated by it. Their eardrums begin to vibrate, and then it provokes a response from them, and then they respond to you. So you're shipping your words, or shipping your work, shipping your energy to them, your words shipping them in that regard. You do the same thing when you go before a shrine, go before into a shrine house, a Bosom Fie, a Bosom Dine, and so forth, or you have a specific sculpture where a divinity will actually take up residence, and they will only take up residence if you have established something in harmony with order. If you're engaged in disorder, you're going to have idols and structures all over the shrine, and no deity will take up residence. Nothing. And the only spirit that will take up residence in the shrine that's established based on disorder, because the person is disordered, is a discarnate, criminal, wayward type spirit, and they will take up residence in those little idols, and then you'll be communicating with criminal type spirits, and they'll lie into their deities and all sorts of nonsense. And this is where you get people going to get divination, and they'll talk about the spirit said this and the spirit said that, and the information coming back is crazy and nonsensical and perverse, and you're like, well, it must be the deity because the deity did say this, and then you're engaged in criminality and having negative results. But when you have a real ancestral shrine or a real shrine to a divinity based on what the Supreme Being has directed you through your cross to establish, then the Bosom and the Nsumafu will take up residence, and when you shift your words to those idols on the shrine, you will be communicating directly with the Bosom or the Nsumafu and provoke a response from them. So you're engaged in word shipping or worshiping. So we're talking about EBO, value, worth, that which is precious. Talking about a metal figure, metal piece, pieces of metal, stone, precious metals, and so forth, but also a ball talking about stone or rock and stuff. The divinity that governs this underworld piece and the energy that's moving through the spirit realm, so-called underworld, the one that governs the goldsmith is Sika, that divine gold energy, that divine solar energy moving through the underworld, meaning the divine living energy moving inside your body in the underworld. So when you connect with Bosom Sika, then you're connecting with that which is internal. Then you can attune to the gold within yourself. You can attune to the Ba or the Bayat within yourself. You can attune to the worth within yourself. You can attune to what is your value, what is your worth, what is your unique configuration of energy. When you attune to Sika or Sakar, Bosom Sika, or the divinity Seker, you're attuning to that gold within yourself, and you know your worth. That's on an individual level. And when you understand your worth and recognize your worth because you stimulate the energy of your body through ritual practice, then number one, first and foremost, you will make sure you seek to purify your body. When people talk about the body as the shrine house or the temple and so forth, when you really understand your worth because you activated the Ba, the divine living energy within you, and you recognize your worth, then you will purify your body and keep your body pure. You won't put things in your body that's corrupt because you understand your worth, because you've attuned to that force within you, and you know that force within you. You'll purify your body, and you'll keep your mind and your thoughts, intentions, and actions pure as well, because you don't want to pollute your mind, your thoughts, your projections. You don't want to pollute that which you will be projecting. You don't want to pollute that which you will be projecting with regard to shipping or sending your words, your sounds, or vibrations. You don't want to ship pollution. You value who you are because you recognize who you are, because you've attuned to your divine function. You know your value. You know your worth. You know what you are to execute in creation. So you understand your EBO. You understand your worth. You understand your value. That's the nature of who we are. Once you understand that internally, understand that physically, spiritually and physically on an individual level, then you can begin to see that within Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people who are connected to you. Of course, your family members and other people who are connected to you. The divine living energy within you, the gold within you, that gold within the underworld, the divine living golden force within you. That energetic connection you have to the forces in nature is also the same energetic connection you have to the Ba within and the Ba within other Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people, children and adults, as well as plant life, animal life, mineral life, and so forth. But when we're talking about a social order, we're talking about civilization and family and community, the Oman, the nation and people, your energy connects with theirs. And then you can experience, you don't just talk about in the abstract, brother, sister, we're all one and we're together and we need to come together as a people and all that. That's all intellectual. That's all talking. But when you recognize your value by stimulating your own Ba ritually, and you're really aligning through that stimulation of your own Ba with the fourth Sika or Seker, the gold force within the stone, within the bone and so forth, within the marrow, that divine force in the underworld, then you actually experience your value, experience your work on an energetic level. And once you do that, then you connect with other people's energy as well, and you can see their worth as well. You can feel it. You can connect with it. Your energetic projections connect with theirs, and you recognize their value, and you recognize their work. Just like your heart will recognize in reality through interaction and interdependence the value of the lung. So the heart and lung complex works together. They interact and work harmoniously with one another. They quote-unquote recognize each other's value, and they naturally work together as they are designed to do. The only way they wouldn't work together is if they get off track and become polluted for some reason. But when they purify themselves and function in a purified fashion, then they naturally work together because they recognize, quote-unquote, the value of each other's function. When you purify yourself, Odwira, self-purification, as we talked about in the previous broadcast, then you not only recognize your own value, what your divine function is, but through that energetic projection, you also connect with other people and you recognize their value, their work, what they are to contribute to the great divine body, and how you all are to interact on an interdependent level. So you recognize their value and you're naturally inclined. You have an innate inclination or propensity to function in harmony with them. And then you begin to support the work that they're doing within the great divine body, and they begin to support the work that you're doing in the great divine body, just like the cells do within the body. So now let's go to the Okan economic development model. So we're talking about this philosophical foundation and cosmological foundation for our people connecting on that level, determining our worth, our value, and aligning with one another so we can work together. Ancestral religion is the foundation of a sound economic structure. We're not just talking about, abstract. We're not just talking about intellectualism. If you just talked about something intellectual, it's an intellectual argument, clearly you can tell people, listen, black people are suffering, black people are unemployed, black people don't have, schools that are up to par, and teachers that are working in schools that care anything about the children. Black people don't get served well with regard to hospitals and so forth. Black people don't have stores in the community and manufacturing plants. We're not manufacturing cars and things like that. We need different things, but how we have over $1 trillion coming through our hands on a yearly basis. And less than 5% of that money stays in the community. We just get it and spend 95+% of it with the whites and their offspring. If we were to spend that 95% of it in our own businesses, instead of getting it, instead of them being enriched and building hospitals and schools and everything in our communities that are subpar, we could use the exact same money and enrich ourselves and build hospitals and schools and stores and everything else and manufacturing plants in our own community. And then the whites and their offspring, certain segments of their population will be poor because they're not receiving this nearly $1 trillion from us. We will be keeping it in our own community and serving all of our needs. That's an intellectual argument that you can make to anybody, and every single black person that hears that says, that's correct. However, why don't we operate based on that? Because it's not just something intellectual. That's not enough to make us move. We're not operating based on that reality because we have been brainwashed, and spiritually we have been encoded with self-destructive, perverse, polluted thinking. We haven't purified our spirit bodies. We have incorporated certain habits because we're locked down spiritually. Once we free ourselves from that perversion, free ourselves from the energy and programming of the whites and their offspring, and begin to recognize our value and our worth spiritually by attuning to our own Ba and Ba'et. And through that process, we're attuning to the divinity Sika, the divine gold within the earth, divine golden energy within the underworld, within the body, the one who governs goldsmiths in ancient Kemet, that golden energy, fashioning that golden energy within our body. Once we connect with that consciously, then we understand our own worth, then we connect with other individuals and recognize their worth as well, recognize their function in creation as well, respect their function in creation as well, and we naturally are drawn to harmonize and function with them. So when we go to the Akan Economic Development Model, we'll put the link back in the chat room once again so you can see that. And when you go to the page, all right. If you looking at page 1 in this model, so we say in the Akan language, the term Akan means hunger or want of something. This term is related to Akan, referencing spirit possession, as well as Nkom, referencing spirit communication. These terms have their roots in our ancestral language of ancient Kanit and Kemet, Nubian Egypt, where we find Kam meaning to embrace, to possess, seize, become possessed by a deity. We show the Medutu showing that. So the same term in Akan, Akan meaning possession, the term Kam in ancient Kemet meaning to embrace, to possess, seize, to become possessed by a deity. And we show the Medutu, and part of that Medutu, the spelling of Kam, plus the determinative symbol of two arms embracing something. The term Akan in Akan is comprised of the terms Ka, meaning to go, and Mu, meaning within. Thus, Komu or Kom means to go within. This references hunger, desire for the going within, or consumption, possession of food and medicine for sustenance, healing, building, and protection, as well as the spirit of an Abosom, deity, or an Osamai, an ancestral spirit, going within, or possessing the individual for spiritual sustenance, spiritual healing, building, and protection. In a natural sense, Akan references our innate inclination to possess, Akan, that which we need to sustain ourselves, heal ourselves, protect ourselves, develop ourselves, govern ourselves, shelter ourselves, and clothe ourselves. This constellation of 7 needs resounds the 7 principal values of Aman Sesu, or nation building, restoration. For Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut people is delineated within Akwamu Mine, Amaruka Etitimu, the Akwamu nation in North America. So we have 7 principal values of nation building, Aman Sesu, which we've talked about on numerous occasions, based on the deities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, which govern the 7-day week, which is a holistic cycle that governs all natural cycles on Earth. These 7 principal values are linked to these 7 forces in creation. Methods of food production and preservation, methods of curing disease, establishing a military structure, establishing institutions of education, training, and cultivation, sound systems of governance and jurisprudence, construction of homes on acquired land, production of clothing. So when we talk about Akan, meaning possession, meaning hunger, but also meaning possession, physically and spiritually, it references, as we said, our innate inclination to possess that which we need to sustain ourselves, heal ourselves, protect ourselves, develop ourselves, govern ourselves, shelter ourselves, and clothe ourselves. This constellation of 7 needs resounds the 7 principal values of Aman Sesu, or nation building, restoration. Now, on page 3, it says, our innate inclination manifests as Akan, hunger or for possession, directs us to address these needs in harmony with Inyamewa, Inyame, Insheshe, the divine order, the Mother and Father Supreme Being's order, the divine order. So we don't just address our needs, just if you're hungry, you steal some food, or you take whatever you want to take in, it just tastes good at the time, or you need some clothes, you just snatch some. All the constellation of 7 needs that resound the 7 principal values of nation building. We are naturally inclined to address these needs, but we are naturally inclined to address them in harmony with divine order. When we talk about nation building, including economic activity, there's a cultural basis, a cosmological basis rooted in divine order. The 7 principal values of nation building are organized according to the Bosom, who govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, which govern the 7-day week. This natural and perpetual 7-day cycle informs the natural manner in which we must function in the world. That includes our chronobiological cycle called the circumseptan cycle, which every 7 days, circumseptan, which means about 7 days, there are physiological changes that take place within the body, which is akin to the 7-day week in the Bosom, the deities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. So on a chronobiological level, we are in harmony on that 7-day cycle with the 7-day cycle that's governed by the Bosom. As we fully embrace our collective identity, the Afuraitkaitnut people, we naturally recognize and embrace our collective function as a group of people, separate and distinct from non-Afuraitkaitnut individuals. Talking about the whites and their offspring as cancerous cells within the body. When we acknowledge our collective identity and function as Afuraitkaitnut people, it spiritually prompts us to consciously work with one another to address the constellation of 7 needs addressed above. Therefore, we do not have to be taught to work together. It is an intrinsic, innate propensity. It is Akan, hunger for and possession, rooted in Inyamewa, Inyame, Nsheshe, divine order. So then, this is what we're dealing with. So when we talk about we don't have to be taught, in this text, it's an innate propensity to our natural inclination to work together once we embrace our collective identity in relationship to our individual identity and function. Then we have a natural inclination to move forward. We talk about this in this text, but what we did was we defined why is that so? What is that natural propensity? Where does it come from? What is our individual identity? What is our individual function? That goes back to our value. Our function determines our value, and our value determines our worth. So when you know what your divine function is, because you align with your cry, your soul, your divine consciousness, you know what function you came into the world to execute. That spiritual brain, that force within your head region, encoded within that is your spiritual function. And then your value in the great divine body is determined by that function. And your worth in the world is determined by that value. So when you know what your function is, you have value, you have worth, and of course you have self-esteem and so forth. You're clear, you're purified because you've aligned with that function. You've stimulated the divine living energy within your body through ritual practice, and we did a broadcast on dealing with the Ba and the Bayat, and ritual practice, aligning yourself with order through ritual practice and so forth, so you can align with that divine living energy within you. Once you've done that, you've cleared the debris. You've cleared the debris of the misinformation and the programming from the whites and their offspring. Now you know who you are, you know what your divine function is, and then that natural attraction and magnetism towards other Afuraitkaitnut people to begin to function in harmony, just like cells working inside of the same organ structure to support the organ functioning. We're naturally inclined to do the same. So this is what we're dealing with regard to the nature of that value, the EBO, that which is precious and rare, that metal, but also that stone, the energy inside the bones, inside the bone marrow, inside the vertebrae, inside the spine, connected with the pituitary gland and the brain, the top, Sakar, and all stuff. The golden energy, the gold within the body, the golden solar energy moving through the underworld and inside that's animating us and propelling us towards one another so we can work in a harmonious fashion. All of this is connected to economic activity. When we engage in ritual practice and you sit at the shrine to the craft, you align with your divine function. When you engage in ritual practice and stimulate your Ba, your Bayat, your divine living energy, then you're stimulated and animated to move and execute your function. And then you begin to expend your energy. You employ your own energy, self-employment. You employ your own energy to execute your divine function. And as you employ that energy, you connect with other individuals, and you can align and understand and recognize their value as well, because you connect your energy with theirs, and you see their relationship to you and your relationship to them. And then you begin to work together to address this constellation of 7 needs that we're talking about, that are addressed through nation building and restoration. So we're talking about divinities, forces in nature that undergird our approach to economic activity and so-called cooperative economics, but it's first rooted in self-purification through ritual, then connecting with other individuals who engage in that self-purification as well. And once that happens, then the natural inclination to unite and work together is not something that's taught, it's instantaneous. And as we talked about before, we don't have to seek unification, or we don't have to seek unity. When people say, well, our only problem is we have not united, so we need to forget about our differences and just unite based on things that, unite us, which is the oppression. Of course, that's naive and nonsensical. You don't seek unity and run towards unity. A bunch of people operating together doesn't mean that they're unified. There's a difference between unified people who are unified, and people who are just doing things together, but are disorganized. A bunch of people who meet at the same bus stop and get on the same bus every morning at the same time to go to work. You may have 40 people on the bus. You're all together, but you're not unified. So just because people are coming together, we need to come together as a people, that's not unification. If you think, well, no matter what, we just need to come together and that will solve our problems, that's silly, that's immature, that's ignorant. When you adhere to law, unification is instantaneous. As we said before, if you have a penny and a bowling ball, you hold them up above your head at the same height and release them, drop them at the same time, they will hit the ground at the same time, even though they're structured differently, different size, different weights, and so forth. When they adhere to the law of gravity, they are unified through the law. So as long as they adhere to the law, unification is instantaneous. When we adhere to the law that governs our makeup, that governs our divine function, when we align with ourselves spiritually through Odwira, self-purification, then we open our eyes up and we begin to align with our function. We align every thought, intention, and action with our divine function. We ascribe the value of divine order to every thought, intention, and action, so we make sure that everything we're doing is in harmony with divine order. If we make mistakes, we have ritual practices that help us to realign ourselves with order. That's what ancestral religion is about. So as we're moving throughout the world, we're naturally inclined to execute our function, naturally push towards occupations that will satisfy the kind of energy we have. If we have a fiery immune system type energy, we're naturally inclined towards immune system type functions. So we may open up a Muntu Arts Academy or so-called martial arts academy to teach self-defense and offense to our people. Or we'll engage in security as a defensive function. We'll naturally engage in some kind of natural military function because we have that kind of energy. When we clear our heads ritually, clear our spirits ritually, then we can attune to our divine function. We can connect with the Ba, the divine living energy within us, therefore stimulating our worth, our value, and so forth. And then we're naturally inclined to look towards the kinds of activities we need to be engaged in. But we're also drawn to other individuals, recognizing their value. We connect our energy with theirs, and then we work together in a harmonious fashion. That includes economic activity. So we're talking about the spiritual, cosmological basis of cooperative economics. Once again, it's rooted in ancestral religious practice. We're not taught properly, and therefore we think ancestral religion has nothing to do with economics. We think, people talking about the love of money is the root of all evil and all that other nonsense from the Bible and other things. And then you have other Negroes going off the deep end in the other extreme, talking about all we need is economics and stuff that will solve all of our problems. Clearly, Negroes don't know what they're talking about, and they're learning this misinformation from the whites and their offspring. When you deal with ancestral religion, the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine value, that includes our approach to economic activity. That includes our approach to engaging one another cooperatively. So this is what we're dealing with. Okay, we're going to go through the chat room real quick to see, I think we saw some comments. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, you can hit the number 1 so we can see that your hand is raised and we can connect with you. We saw some activity in the chat room. Want to make sure we didn't miss anything, so just give me a second real quick to go through that. You see some comments. Hold on one second. All right, so that was one comment about the section we were reading from. And let me pull that back up. All right, just give me a second because the chat room very often will jump right back down to the bottom while we're trying to pull it up and we have to keep going back up. Okay, so one question said, one of the things that always kept me confused within Christianity was the law about idolatry, yet there were paintings and statues of Jesus everywhere. So, right, so that's part of the schizophrenia of the whites and their offspring. Because when they're lying, of course, they're mixing all kinds of nonsensical ideas together, trying to control the minds of our people. All right, so the next piece was, okay, that was just a comment. And we're just moving through real quick. Okay, and how did we get from having our own businesses, neighborhoods, et cetera, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, Florida, to begging the government for integration? Okay. And then somebody was talking about integration, killed what we were doing. Of course, that's accurate. I'm just scrolling through to make sure we didn't miss any specific questions. And it looks like we were having okay, there was a discussion going on in there. Let me make sure. All right. And just give me one more second. I got looking for the specific link I wanted to pull up, and I didn't see the link, so give me 1 second. And as I'm looking for this link, hold on 1 second. As we're looking for this link, again, if you have any questions or comments on that specific information, or if you had a question or comment on some of the other information you didn't have a chance to get to, you can hit the number 1 on the phone line. Also, as I'm looking for this specific link, I lost the specific page, so I'm trying to find it real quick. We are in the midst of our fundraising campaign for our Akongwasuya Dine, which is we're establishing a physical center for our institution, Akongwasuya, Institution of Learning, Healing, Training, Employment, and Entrepreneurship. All of the books that we publish, all of the articles, we have over 60 articles. We've published 16 books, of course. We have more coming. Of course, all of the broadcasts that we do, everything that we teach, all of the trainings, the workshops, and so forth that we provide free to the community, whether it's substance abuse abstinence and a ritual method through ancestral religion to overcome addiction to alcohol and marijuana and cigarettes and other drugs and so forth, overcoming transcarnational trauma, intergenerational trauma and suffering and so forth through ritual method, overcoming domestic abuse, the negative effects of domestic abuse, the Berima Afurakani Manhood Workshop for Afurakani young men as well as older adults as well, based on our book, Afurakani Manhood, that workshop, as well as the workshop dealing with the Sankofa Juma training, human services agents, Afurakani people, psychologists, therapists, social workers, case managers, teachers, and so forth, in the process of including culture in their therapeutic interventions with their clients to serve the whole person. So when you're dealing with clients as a social worker, as a therapist, as a teacher in the field of human services, if you do not address the whole person spiritually and physically, then you're not dealing with the whole client. So we address physical soundness and spiritual soundness from the Center of Culture. We have an Afura whole life intervention therapeutic model. It's a method by which you can convey culture into your therapeutic interventions with your clients. And we have the Mpamua Whole Life Journal that we have published as a manual to do so. And we go through it's a whole 2-hour process, training process that we've done that training. We also save it. You can watch the video and go along with the training documents and implement this process with your clients. Once you go through that training process, just by going through the process online, you can communicate with us as well with regard to that. So all of the workshops, presentations that we do in different cities and so forth, as well as the books, other publications, all of that is born of our institution, Nakongwaswea, which was founded in 13,001, so-called 2001, in Chicago, where we're from. A few years ago, we moved to D.C. Of course, we continued to publish, continued to teach, and so forth, continued Akongwaswea, and now we're working to establish a center so that we can expand our class offering to the community. Also have employment opportunities with regard to the publishing, printing, shipping. We do all of that in-house on our own printers. We don't contract that out. So when we establish the center, we can expand our publishing operation and have employment opportunities there. We already have the entrepreneurship option, the no quadefo distributor option. Anybody who would like to begin to work, immediately work for yourself independently as an entrepreneur, becoming a distributor of our softcover books, the 16 books that we publish. That includes Afuraitkaitnut, the origin of the term, Africa, Ankh, the origin of the term, Yoga, Karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra, Kukus and Tum, the ancestral jurisdiction, where we show the cosmological foundation of creation, as well as proving that Jesus and Moses and Muhammad and Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael and Solomon and Sheba and Menelik and all these various characters, Yahweh and Allah, never existed of any race or in any form whatsoever. We proved that conclusively. Coco Ball, showing that dissexuality, homosexuality was never accepted in ancient Kemet, properly translating these texts to prove that. The Anidaho book dealing with awareness and so forth. So we have a number of different books, of course. More Means Dead is another one, popular one. A number of different books. If you want to begin to work as an entrepreneur, we already have that process up and running. We have a few people who are distributing already in a couple of different states. All you have to do is contact us, go to the Nhoma page on our website, the publications page, and you can begin that process immediately. It doesn't matter what your previous work history is. You're simply purchasing the books wholesale from us, and then you're selling them retail. And you'll be independent. You're not working for us. You're working for yourself. So we already have that process, that quadrifold distributor option in place. Of course, we have the classes. We're doing the broadcast. Of course, we will expand our broadcast options. When we have the center, we'll be broadcasting. We have a couple more shows that we want to develop. We just need to have the time to be able to engage that process. When we have the center, we'll be able to spread out a little bit more. We'll also be able to have the classes where we have classes in person, but also live stream those classes, and we will expand our class offerings to the community. So what's happening is, as we're raising funds for the center, the way we are raising funds is through, number one, of course, anybody who purchases one or more of our softcover books. That, of course, assists us in raising funds for the center. So you can do that simply by going to our Nhoma page, our publications page. When you do make any purchase, of course, what we're doing. We also have a GoFundMe campaign for Akongwaswea, and of course, any donation amount is welcome. That includes, however, that any donation of $15 or more, we will send you one or more of our softcover books in return for your donation. So it's not just a free donation. When you make the donation, you'll be basically purchasing one or more of our books. So you'll get an immediate return for your donation because you'll receive a book. It's basically a purchase. But of course, some people will just make a donation. They'll say they don't necessarily need the books, or they may have already purchased some books, and they're just making a donation. We appreciate that as well. But the option is there. Anyone who makes a donation via our GoFundMe campaign of $15 or more, we will send you one or more of our books. So it's not just a free donation. You're receiving something in return. And then the greater, of course, benefit of that is the development of the center. You can also make a donation via our publications page, just making a regular donation via PayPal. We have the donation button as well as the buttons for the purchasing of the book. But again, even if you make a donation via PayPal, any donation of $15 or more, you will receive one or more of our books in return for your donation. Yet I say we thank you, the individuals who have purchased some of the books as well as made donations. We appreciate that. We are at 10% of our fundraising goal. We're trying to raise $25,000. We've raised $2,500 so far, around $2,500 so far. So we are at 10% of our goal. We had identified a property in the past, but then the property was actually sold. One of the properties was sold and one of them was rented out. So this past weekend, we found another property that's on the market that will be suitable for what we are working to do to establish this center. So we're trying to get that, secure that property before somebody, either rents out that property or purchases that property or whatever. Actually, it will be a lease. So before somebody leases that property, we're trying to get that as soon as possible. So any donation amount is welcome. And there's also an option in PayPal if you want to make a recurrent donation as well. You just click that button and PayPal will make a recurrent donation. And any recurrent donation, of course, $15 or more, we'll send you one or more books per month. So every time you have an automatic donation made on a monthly basis where you do the recurrent option in PayPal for donations, then you can receive a book every month and so forth. So again, Yedase for those who have contributed to the work and contributed to the development of our center. And of course, this is an expression of what we're talking about with regard to institution building, learning, training, healing, training, employment, and entrepreneurship. The entrepreneurship piece, of course, coming from the No Quadifo distributor option, which is already up and running. The employment piece will come from once we establish the center, then the publishing arm will have people who can do the copying, the printing, the cutting, the shipping, all of that we need. We'll have, need some people doing that as well because we'll be expanding the publishing operation there. But then we'll also have, the trainings with regard to Sankofa Juma and Patasa System. Patasa System, of course, is our educational curriculum. When people become trained in that curriculum, you can also utilize that when you go out, if you have groups, if you're dealing with, drug addiction, or if you have groups, young men or at-risk youth, that you're working in the social human services realm and people need, sometimes people have people come out to do rites of passage, or they have, manhood groups and things like that. You can utilize the Patasa System curriculum as part of such a group. Or you can utilize the Odwira Afurakanu manhood workshop structure in the group based on our book, Afurakanu Manhood. And when you go out, you can, because you've been trained in that fashion, you can go out and teach those things, and you get paid to do those kinds of groups, conduct those kinds of groups. People have those groups at group homes, foster care situations, after-school programs, in-school programs and things like that, drug addiction programs, all kinds of programs around the country, human services, social services, and so forth. People have different groups, and they have people come out and do things. When you're trained through Odwira, Afurakanu Manhood, or Patasa System, or Sankofa Juma, then you can utilize that training to impact the community, but also, it's a way for you to generate revenue for yourself as someone who does that kind of human services work, and you will have methods that are effective that you can use. Some people just go out and do those kind of groups, and they sit around and they download stuff from the internet and talk about things here and there, and it's just kind of stimulating people's minds and stuff like that. But we have actual systems that are effective. The Patasa System curriculum is a 7 modules designed to be implemented in 7 40-minute sessions, whether you do it 7 days in a row or 7 weeks in a row when you meet with your groups and so forth. The Odwira Afurakanu Manhood is a book. It's divided into 7 sections. You can also utilize that in 7 weeks, or if you have just one time to be with the group of people, whether it's youth or adults or whatever, you can just do a whole workshop and go through the whole piece, or you can separate it out in 7 different sections, and every week or every time you meet, you start off with the first section and go through, so you go through with the whole book, and you can also utilize that as the foundation the Tasatem, and ODWIRAMAN is the foundation for manhood training or so-called rites of passage and so forth. So those are also things that become employment opportunities as well for yourself as an independent an entrepreneur, an independent contractor in the field of human service. So we have a call on the phone line. Let us that Michiawo on the phone line, number 5856. You had a question or a comment?
What's up, Brother Crazy? This is Kojo from Connecticut.
That's good to hear. I just want
to say, man, we appreciate what you do for us, what you and your ancestors are doing for us. You know, I've been around the so-called conscious community for a few years now, and I didn't find anything that came close to this. You know, I listen to all the teachers from Marcus Garvey, Dr. Denver, Johnny Clark, and what you're doing is a more spiritual depth to it, and I appreciate them, but what you're doing, I find it to be the real deal. And I just want to advise anybody that is thinking about donating towards anybody, you know, to put you in front of that list, because, you know, I like doing background check, and like everybody that so-called teachers out there did it on you, did it on a lot of other brothers and sisters, and I found yours to be the most genuine and found no faults with it. So just appreciate you. We ain't donating towards you. We ain't got to worry about our money going to strip clubs and to strippers and foolishness like that, you know. So appreciate you, and just keep doing what you're doing, you know. And I challenge anybody to check out all the leaders, check out their background, check yours out, and they'll see what I'm talking about. So we appreciate you. We appreciate the African-centeredness that you're dealing with, because I can't see somebody leading and teaching about African-centeredness without having an African name and without dropping and getting rid of the slave master's name. So keep doing what you're doing, brother. We find it to be the best, and you got my support, and you'll make our donation. Just wanted to say that.
I'll say we really appreciate that. Really appreciate the support, and we look forward to coming back out. We're going to connect again, once again, in Connecticut. You know, hopefully this summer, as a matter of fact, we're going to do something. So, yeah, keep in touch. We're going to reconnect. But I appreciate that. We really appreciate your support, continued support.
Yeah, we can't wait for you to come back out here. We love you out here, man. We love your ancestors. We love ours, and can't wait.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I'll say to the entire community out there, we really appreciate the support you all have given us.
You do more for us than we could ever do for you, so
I'm trying to get like y'all. All right.
All right, brother. Catch up.
Okay. So, and as a matter of fact, we went out to Connecticut a couple of times. Great exchange of information, very supportive community. We do want to come back out, and we're going to be check the website on a regular basis. You can check the Guamu Casa page on the website on a regular basis, because you'll see the updates for the events that we're going to be having this summer. We do have a date for July 25th in North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, but we have to get the specific details. We're just waiting for the event. It's actually the Soul Psychic Fair, the Het Ma'aka, convened by Ma'akim Ma'akeru Amen. And we've spoken at that event before in D.C., when they had it in D.C., and then they also had it in Virginia, in Druryville, Virginia, and then they're going to have it again, and it moves different places, different cities. It's going to be in Durham, North Carolina. It's supposed to be on July 25th. Once the details come in, then we'll, put that information out. We also have some events coming up in Philadelphia and some other places. So keep checking the Guamu Casa page on the website so you can get the updates on where we're going to be. And if you would like for us to come to your area, send us an email. Go to the og.fo.com website. You can just send us an email. When you look at the Guamu Casa page, we talk about our approach to Guamu Casa. Guamu means public, the public, the square, the market, and so forth. And Casa means speech. So the Guamu Casa page means public speech, public speaking, and so forth. We have our own ancestral approach to public speech of Guamu Casa as a service to the Afuraitkaitnut community. So we did a broadcast on that. When you go to the Guamu Casa page, you learn about that, and we talk about the nature of these divinities that govern the opening of the mouth and communication with the community and so forth. Of course, we do not charge a speaker's fee for doing presentations, and we also do not charge admission fees for people to come and hear us speak. So when people come out to our presentations, we stipulate that the event, the people will come for free. We always give away a free copy of one of our books to everybody who comes out, so they can come in and they're not charged, and they leave not just with the presentation, but they leave with at least one of our books, so they leave with something tangible that they can study. So this is our approach to Guamu Casa, or public speech, from an ancestral religious perspective, an Afuraitkaitnut ancestral religious perspective. And of course, the topics we speak on are the topics addressed in our 16 books, the 60-plus publications, and now this is the 52nd broadcast that we've done on Blog Talk. So these are the things that we speak on. So if you want us to come out to your area, just let us know, send us an email and so forth, and we can connect with you. All right. So I was looking for the specific link. Also, check later tonight. We're going to post the link to the information on the website. This is EGUA Day, of course, Marketplace Day. The Okom Business of the Week is Ab-Seshat Marketing Services. We're going to post that on our website later this evening. We didn't get a chance to do it earlier today, but we're going to post it later this evening on the website, and then you'll be able to go and link to that specific business. And we're going to have the individual come on, sister come on, who's the owner of the business, and talk about that in detail. So check that out later tonight. We saw some more communication in the chat room. Want to make sure there weren't any questions in the chat room. Okay, so there was says I often listen to the YouTube broadcast, refer to the given references, etc. Also, this has shifted my belief system and the way I live life on a daily basis. Okay, and may I say, we appreciate that, and that's the goal of what we are doing with regard to teaching. So on one hand, when you talk about, for example, in our Kongwa Suya, in our institution where we teach this information and information in the books and so forth, we're not just talking about intellectualism. We're talking about things that apply directly to people's lives and impact people's lives in a positive capacity. Whether we deal with our Nkwamua Whole Life Journal, talking about natural health, including natural foods and melanin and things like that, then people begin to shift their dietary practices. When we talk about Akumasa, substance abuse, in the abstinence within the Afuraitkaitnut community, and our Kum method to overcome addictions to alcohol and marijuana and cigarettes and cigars and other drugs and so forth, when people utilize that ritual method and they overcome their addictions based on ancestral religious practices to these toxic substances. So, of course, that transforms their lives on a physical level, healing themselves, but also with regard to their children and people who are connected to them as well. It also affects them financially because now they're not wasting money on these poisons. They can reallocate those funds, starve the beast to feed the pride, and begin to utilize those funds in a, intelligent fashion, in a positive fashion. When we talk about Akumadan, domestic abuse neutralization, killing the negative effects, domestic abuse that have plagued people. Some people suffer from sexual abuse when they were children, or domestic violence when they were children and into adulthood and so forth, still plaguing individuals, still controlling the way their lives, still suffering from depression, anxiety, not able to move forward in life and so forth. When you embrace ancestral culture, ancestral religion, and learn how to overcome these things through a ritual practice to realign yourself with your krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness, get that support from your nanano nsamafo, then you can move forward in life and overcome these depressions and so forth, these levels of anxiety and so forth. When we deal with overcoming transcarnational trauma, intergenerational trauma, individuals who suffered various forms of trauma, including people who've been diagnosed, very often misdiagnosed with major depressive disorder or schizophrenia or bipolar and so forth. Very often people are just suffering from the effects of not only trauma, but then also discarnate ancestresses and ancestors and non-relatives who are affecting individuals, affecting their mindset, putting certain thoughts in their head and inclinations and motivations and drives and so forth. Once you realign with yourself spiritually, you can repel those negative entities, but you can also break free from conditioned mindsets that have locked you into certain patterns of behavior. You can overcome things that are causing you to engage in self-destructive behavior, move forward in a positive fashion that's good for you, your own physical health, your own mental health, and so forth, spiritual balance, emotional balance, and good for your children and anybody connected to you as well. When we talk about ODWIRAMAN, Afurakanu manhood, transforming people from people who engage in self-destructive activity to Afurakanu men who are responsible, who are productive, who are moving forward to support our community in a positive capacity, in a positive fashion. When we deal with human services agents, and you have social workers and other individuals who are working with the community on a regular basis, working with at-risk youth, working with people in mental health, adults and so forth, people who are suffering in the community. We have people who are in human services, all kinds of social workers, therapists, even attorneys, advocates, and so forth, who are working with our people on a daily basis. We want those people to have tools that they can use to address the whole nature of the person, physical soundness and spiritual soundness from the center of culture, because we can't be everywhere at the same time. So if we can't be everywhere at the same time, we want to give the people who are working with our people the tools to actually utilize to enhance the lives of our people. When we deal with education and different things like that, we give people tools. So people are using the Patah educational curriculum in their African-centered schools, as well as people who are in regular schools, and they're trying to make a difference and are making a difference in regular schools. So they are going in those schools in spite of the system utilizing our curriculum to raise up our people. When we talk about schools, for example, and building institutions, we have this institution. We're just trying to get a physical space for the institution so we can expand what we are already doing. Our institution is already up and running. Broadcasts and the books and publications are just, and workshops are just a reflection of that. But we'll be able to expand our service. That's an institution. We have, African-centered schools all over the country. But at the moment, we don't have enough educational institutions that will connect with all of the millions of our people. But we have to look at the reality. Even if we built, like one school in every major city in the next 12 months, that would be a great thing, but that still wouldn't capture millions of our people. We can build a number of businesses incrementally. That's going to take time, but that's not going to capture the millions of our people all at the same time. However, when people are turned on to ancestral religion, they're ancestrally inherited practices that come directly from their blood circle, directly from the ancestresses and ancestors. When we deal with that, then that can reach all of our people at the same time. People can tune into broadcasts, begin to engage their Nsamako, re-embrace Nanasom, Afuraitkaitnut, ancestral religion, and that becomes their shield. So when they go into a school, their children are repelling the nonsense. They are going to the school, going to a regular public school. They'll do the same thing that like our people who come from other countries. They have their own culture. They come into America. Maybe they come from Nigeria, come from Ghana, something like that, the ones who still maintain their actual culture, not brainwashed Christianity and so forth. They'll come into America. They'll go into the public schools in America. They know that what's being taught in the public schools in America, in the high schools and the universities, the culture is perverse, but they don't embrace that culture. They have their own culture. So they simply come in here and exploit the educational system, get the little degrees that they need to get so that they can generate a great deal of money, but they leave the white culture alone. So they see themselves as coming into a foreign territory, exploiting this territory for their resources, but they maintain their culture, and anything that the whites and their offspring are trying to teach their children that's outside of their Akan culture or Gant culture or whatever culture they come from, they automatically reject it, because when they go home every night, they have their own culture. So their culture defends them from the perversity of white culture. So they're moving throughout this nation powered by their own culture and just grabbing certain things that they need. When we embrace our ancestral religious practices, we are the same way. We are operating behind enemy lines, but we're emboldened and empowered by our culture. So millions of our people are still going to be in these public schools. Millions of our people are still going to be working for the whites and offspring until we can become independent. But when you infuse people with their ancestral culture, because they began to embrace their own ancestral religious culture, then that becomes the shield by which they can repel the nonsense coming from these schools. So you can have a child in a public school. If there's no African-centered school that you can send your child to, and you can't develop an African-centered home school because you have to work right now, when they're infused with culture, that child will be in the school and they can repel that nonsense and only get the automatic and be preserved and mummified like Al-Sar, preserved from decay because they're preserved by their culture. They can move within these situations until it's time where there is a school that's developed, and then they can, of course, naturally merge into that school and do what they need to do. Or you can operate within a job, repel the whites and their offspring, just do what you need to do to make your money until you can develop your own business or connect with the black business and so forth. So, like a minute left in the broadcast, so we're going to end the broadcast here. Yedase, we thank you once again for tuning into the show. Again, we thank everyone who has supported the building of the institution, purchased the books and so forth. If you'd like to support the work we're doing, if you benefited from the free books and the broadcast and everything else, just go to our Nhoma page, the publications page, and you can connect with us there. You can make a purchase of one or more books. Any order of 10 books or more is automatically 30% off. So many people will order the first 10 books of the set. That's only $66. Some people order the whole 16-book set, 30% off. So any order of 10 books or more is 30% off. So again, Yedase for tuning in to the show, support the work, and Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again. That's up.